so that, okay. And Alina has started the recording. I'm also joined by my colleague Alina Brave and also Ryan Hange. If you all want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully now the mic is working.
Yes, good.
Great.
And hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Hand, the Associate Director for Citywide Planning, and I lead the team conducting this work.
Wonderful. All right, Alina, do you want to jump into it?
Sure, sounds great. First of all, I want to say thank you for everybody. We're really glad that you are here. Thank you for taking the time this afternoon to join us. Thank you also for introducing yourself in the chat function. If you have not had a chance to do that, please do that now. We would love to see who is in the virtual room. So if you could add your name and organization to the chat. Today's session is an opportunity to learn about a new grant opportunity around public engagement for DC 2050, the district's next comprehensive plan. We are going to walk through the grant opportunity, the DC 2050 planning process, and how your organization can get involved. We'll cover the application process, the timeline, and what to expect during the review process. We will close with some Q&A. Please raise your hand and we will unmute your mic or drop your question in the chat for us. And if we cannot answer your question today, we will transcribe your questions and get back to you by the end of the week. So we will start with a general overview of the grant. So the DC Office of Planning is seeking to partner with community-based organizations like yours to expand public participation in the DC 2050 planning process. We are especially looking to work with organizations that have a deep history of serving Black residents, particularly residents with incomes of 50% of the median family income or less in wards 4, 5, 7, and 8, or people with limited English proficiency. The maximum award is $30,000. Funds can be used for all sorts of engagement work, and it can be used to cover space, supplies, but they cannot be used for food, ticketed events. The applications for this grant will be due on October 22nd, 2025 at 4 p.m. and they will be submitted via email to edwardgeifer@dc.gov. In terms of the grant and some additional details about what we anticipate the grantees working on. So each grantee will develop an engagement work plan tailored to their community in collaboration with the Office of Planning to organize engagement activities. Each grantee will be responsible for managing outreach for each engagement activity, managing event logistics, tracking event participation, and developing a summary of findings describing what was heard from the community. Examples of engagement are also included here, but certainly are not limited to small focus groups, trainings, listening sessions, interactive events. Really, we welcome your ideas. I'm going to turn it back over to Nick to talk about DC 2050 overall.
Great, thanks, Alina. So DC 2050, as Alina mentioned, is the district's next comprehensive plan. What does a comprehensive plan do? It outlines the community's long-range vision and growth for the future and for how development is shaped in the city by establishing policies and priorities to guide both the use, the density, the development, and the form of our built environment. And it is also a document that informs our zoning regulations and our capital improvement plan budgeting for the city. So all of the civic facilities and infrastructure that you see the district investing in is shaped heavily by this planning process. Go to the next slide. So why are we doing a new comprehensive plan now? We know the district has changed a lot since the last comprehensive plan was produced initially in 2006. This will be what's called a rewrite of the comprehensive plan. So we had completed an amendment to the 2006 plan most recently in 2021. This plan is starting with a building off of that plan, but allowing us the opportunity to think about different structures and a different way to approach our long-range planning for the city, and hopefully making it a more clear and concise document that is more user-friendly and easy for anyone from the city to pick up and know what the future means for their neighborhood and their interests. And we're also growing, so our population in the city is continue to see growth projections, both in overall population and in the number of jobs. OP continues to evaluate everything that we're seeing, both on the federal level and with the overall economy closely. Through this process, we will plan to update our forecasts, but currently are still going with our COG around 10.0, the Washington Metro Council of Governments forecast, which has us growing by close to 150,000 residents by 2050. And we know we need to think about how that growth, where that growth occurs, how that growth occurs, how we're creating the jobs that meet the needs of district residents, and creating neighborhoods that allow everybody to stay and remain in the district and thrive where they are as we move forward. And so where are we now? We actually kicked off our comprehensive plan in March with the mayor at the Strand Theater, or the Strand Restaurant now. We have just concluded our phase 1 of engagement, where we've really been meeting with communities across the city, gathering kind of big picture feedback on top level goals and priorities across different typical elements that one would find in a comprehensive plan. We are now moving into exploring possible futures, where we really start looking at some maps and talking about approaches to growth in different parts of the city and through different means. And we are going to kick off the workshops for our phase 2 series starting in October, at the end of October. We'll be announcing those workshops shortly. And then we move into drafting of the plan, our next big public engagement after this fall, and then spring workshops, which we'll have, is going to be in the fall of 2026 when we release a draft plan to the public. We will then be, that draft plan will then be submitted to the DC Council in July 27, and then goes through Council, NCPC, and congressional approval before becoming implementable. So that red checked kind of phase, that second phase, explore possible futures, that is really the focus of this grant. That's what we are looking for all of you to assist in our outreach with residents across the district, and particularly in the communities mentioned in the grant, to gather feedback and engagement to help us identify those approaches to growth that are going to resonate most with residents. And so just a little recap on phase 1 and what we've done thus far. We had a visioning survey that was released back in March. Over 2,000 people completed that. We heard a lot about what people liked about the district today, the diversity and the culture that the district offers, the walkability of its neighborhoods, and also hosted a number of community meetings, both some introductory open houses, as well as some workshops where we introduced a board activity game that hopefully some of you participated in, or your organizations participated in, where we had people identify what made up a complete community to them, place different types of housing and amenities on a board to symbolize a neighborhood and what was important for them to see in that neighborhood. We've also engaged heavily through a targeted pop-up approach so that we could meet people where they are in different parts of the district. Very much going out to festivals and trying to meet people when they were already out, so that we were bringing people into this process. We were just at the H Street Fest last weekend. We did Anacostia River Festival earlier this year. Overall, we've done 55 events across all the wards since we launched. You can go to the next slide. And some of what we've heard so far is that in DC, people do typically meet a lot of their daily needs within a 15 to 30-minute commute, but that east-west connection really does limit where people see themselves settling. Residents also time and again, grocery stores or access to healthy food, as well as parks and recreation came up as top priorities for amenities or the types of resources people wanted close to their homes. Also access to transit, whether that be metro, bus, or however folks regularly got around. We've also engaged in a number of targeted focus group conversations. You have a picture with some folks that we had a focus group of with Bria there at the in the third picture, and we've heard that 3/4 of people want to see themselves remaining in DC. So this plan is about creating policies that allow that to happen and make it easier to remain in the district, and also welcome in some of that growth that we know is coming and prepare for that. We've also heard that from particularly the May and June engagements where we were engaging in this complete communities game, that stakeholders wanted to see new housing of different varieties that could accommodate both different incomes, different housing structures, different kind of family makeups, and different sizes, and have that be accessible to transit and close to the amenities and the culture and diversity that so many people told us they love about DC. You can go to the next one. And so who have we not done as great of a job reaching thus far? And this is really where we're looking to partner with some of you on this grant process. So we've reached residents from all wards, but definitely have struggled to reach residents from particular wards, in particular wards 4, 5, 7, and 8. We have seen less residents reached than across other wards, and particularly within those wards, Black residents with incomes at or below 50% of the median family income. So you can see the chart on the right is showing the DC 2050 engagement in red against the overall population breakdown. And so you see we have reached much less of the Black population than is represented in the overall DC population, and we have tilted to more white residents that have come out to the meetings and engagement. So we want to make sure that we're doubling down on our efforts. And really throughout this planning process, one of our tenets is to be transparent about the data of who we're reaching and who we're not reaching, and to reinforce our approach and adjust and be flexible with strategy to make sure that we are elevating and reaching those voices from residents that we haven't heard from as much in this process. So that's what we were really looking for all of you to help be a partner on and help us support as we move forward. And just a little preview of what's coming next from the DC 2050 perspective. As I mentioned, we will be having a couple of workshops in October and November where we engage residents around how they want to grow across the city and in their neighborhoods. Then we will have, we also have some ANC briefings to brief our local representatives on the effort and where we are currently as we enter into phase 2. In the winter to spring, we will be hosting focus groups, particularly across geographies where we've heard less from residents thus far. And then we will also be holding office hours alongside those focus groups. And in February and March, we will be hosting another series of workshops where we'll actually be presenting a potential avenue for growth, a potential scenario for growth that we'll get some feedback on before working that into the draft plan that gets released, as I mentioned, in September. So that time frame of engagement, thinking about those February workshops, we definitely encourage anyone interested to try to come out to the October, November workshops, which again, we'll be releasing the information around those very soon, this week, actually, later this week. And so definitely encourage you and your organizations to both help get the word out and also attend so you can get a firsthand experience of the types of things that we'll be talking about as we move forward into phase 2. And with that, I think it's back over to you, Alina.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So we are going to jump back into the application itself and describe what components will make up a complete application here. So of course, we require a proposal narrative describing your organization and your experience engaging DC residents, as well as a description of your proposed engagement activities, the goals, the staffing, and the outreach approach. We're asking each applicant to describe how you would track participation and measure success, and that would be captured in a performance plan. We have an attachment that's essentially a template, but we are asking each applicant to describe what measures they would use. And then we are also including another attachment, which is the draft work plan. And that is essentially a timeline that describes when different engagement opportunities would occur that your team would manage, timeline, activities, tasks, as well as assigned staff. We are requesting of course, a budget proposal, no more than 1 page, with a cost breakdown. And then we have a number of attachments, required attachments. So that includes a certificate of clean hands, insurance documentation, and an organizational chart and board list. In terms of the review process, so the applications will be reviewed by a panel, essentially staff across the several divisions, and scored across 5 different criteria that are outlined here. And there is quite a bit more detail about this in the RFA itself, but essentially I'm just going to walk through it. We're looking at soundness of each proposal. Is the engagement plan realistic and aligned with the timeline and budget? In terms of budget and grant management, we're looking at, is the budget reasonable? Does the organization have experience managing grants? In terms of performance evaluation, this is where we're curious how you would track participation and document findings. As far as engagement itself, we want to know if your organization already has a lot of experience and expertise with the communities that we described and discussed during this presentation. Is there a sound outreach approach to reaching these communities? And then in terms of diversity and equity and inclusion, how will you ensure, for example, that accessibility needs are met and elevate the needs of the communities that you serve? And then moving on to the timeline here. So the applications are due at 4 p.m. again on October 22nd. We anticipate notifying grantees in November of this year with an orientation led by Office of Planning in December of 2025. Engagement could begin as early as January of 2026. An interim report would be due to our office at the end of May, and then a final report at the end of the fiscal year in September, so September 30th, 2026, and that's when all engagement must obviously wrap up. Okay, so how to apply? Again, please send your complete application via email to edwardgeifer@dc.gov. And just to reiterate, applications are due October 22nd at 4 p.m. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us via dc2050@dc.gov. I think most of you have my email, so you can reach out directly with questions. And we're here to support you through the process and try to, respond to any questions that we receive. Thank you again for spending a part of your day with us, and also for the work that you do every day to strengthen your communities. We're excited by the possibility of partnering with organizations like yours. And with that, I think we can transition to hearing any questions that you might have if you want to raise your hand or drop questions in the chat. And I see one already about the timeline, so I'm going to go back to the timeline.
Thank you, Alina. This is Edward.
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
I was just going to offer to read a couple questions from the chat, Nick. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
One question, should we be planning opportunities that need OP staff present, or just our own staff with whatever format OP deems suitable? Nick, Alina, Ryan, could you talk a little more about what a typical engagement might look like?
Thanks, Ed. I'll take the lead on this one. By and large, we would like for our CBO partners to take the lead on these engagements, and that does mean being the lead presenter. That being said, for selected organizations, as we develop the grant agreements, we're happy to discuss a role that OP may play in some of these events going forward. As part of this work, we will be working with each selected organization to effectively communicate about the comprehensive plan. And so that's where we'll have the conversations about what is important, what each organization would need to do.
Thank you, Ryan. This question about formatting guidance, number of pages. I realize everyone has not had a chance to look through the request for applications. It's 28 pages. That sounds intimidating. A lot of that is kind of the fine print, which is important too. But as you dive further into the RFA, page 6 does lay out what we're looking for the proposal. 4 pages for a summary, a page for the budget proposal, etc. So we do give some guidelines there on the format and sort of the number of pages we're looking for. Trey Sherrard asked about the timeline, and that's on the screen now. Is there an RFA? Yes, there is. And as I scroll up, I see Nick Kushner at 225 linked to the RFA. Let's see. Will organizations be using their own engagement activities to collect the data needed? Is there a list of questions, data needed to be collected? Excuse me. DC 2050 team, would you like to answer that? Nita Finley?
Yep.
Yes.
You
Go
want
ahead,
to do
Nick.
it? Yeah, so we will be providing additional guidance on this. There are specific data metrics that we want to capture from every type of engagement, every touch point that you would have as an agency, some simple demographic questions. And then we will be having kind of core outcomes that we want to get from these engagements, which we'll talk about in the orientations when people are brought on board. But kind of core, yes, so there'll be a lot of guidance for that.
Will and can OP be supporting on materials for engagement?
OP will have a set of standard materials that we will provide our CBO partners. If there are additional materials that are needed, that's something we'll be happy to discuss during the grant agreement phase before for selected organizations.
Okay, I am looking up what we put for the NOFA. There's a question about organizations. And the NOFA, or the Notice of Funding Availability, did talk about what type of organizations are eligible. And we wrote a charitable organization, association, or trust that has been granted tax exempt status under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code. And while I'm here, I'll mention that we're looking for also that you have a business license in DC, have a principal place of business in the district, and I'll touch briefly on this too, can provide a clean hands certificate. That's a certificate from the DC Office of Tax and Revenue, saying that you're in good financial standing, you don't have outstanding taxes, etc. Can provide that clean hands certificate, and that you meet certain insurance requirements. I talked about the fine print, and we do require that each successful grantee has certain levels of insurance. Many of you who work with the district have worked with the district. These are fairly standard, and maybe you have them already for other grants or other business opportunities you've had. I will say, if you have questions especially about insurance or clean hands, to talk to us about that, to include as much information about why you haven't been able to get those at the time of application, for example. Again, any successful grantee will have to have those. So one way or another, we will need a clean hands. We will need a certificate of insurance coverage showing that those levels of insurance that are required in the RFA are met. But we're also happy to talk about those with you. Going back to the chat, if anyone would like to take over. I don't know where I left off.
Yeah, I can take over. So I think you just answered this, Ed, but does this grant only apply to nonprofits? Does the organization need to be physically located in Ward 4, 5, 7, or 8? Is there any limitations on the organization's overall budget?
So as Ed mentioned, no, the organization does not need to be located in wards 4, 5, 7, or 8 specifically, but we are asking that you describe your relationship and connection to those communities and help us understand why you'd be a great partner to work with in those areas.
And no
in terms of a
limitations
Maryland
about
nonprofit, sorry, Ed.
sorry. I was just going to say, no limitations that we included for the size of the organization or your annual revenue or things like that.
Correct.
And what is the engagement goal for the project for each organization, specifically in regards to the number of community members that participate in engagement activities? Alina,
Are you
is that
asking?
called out in the RFA?
No, that is not called out as a specific, there's no specific number in the RFA, but I do believe that we are requesting an estimate of that for the work plan as part of the work plan.
And so the reason why we're doing that is we're not just looking for the number of people you can reach, but we want to understand how effectively you can reach the communities you're connected with.
The no font guidance, is there any fonts to?
So
I'm
we did
guessing they're
provide
asking
font
about
guidance, so-
size there, and let's just stick to 11 or 12.
And then, okay, we're a nonprofit registered in Maryland, but we're operating in DC. We partner with the DC school to conduct our programming. Would this meet the requirements for a principal place of business?
If you would like to send that to us in writing, we could have our attorneys take a look and provide an opinion as to whether it would meet the standard. And would that be okay, Ed?
That sounds good.
Okay. Is there an age limitation on the ages of the community members that participate in engagement activities? Are youth included in these engagement activities? Yes, we would love to have youth engagement as well. I don't think we have any limit on age.
By and large, we are engaging all community members. So I'd say we would not want to engage only one community such as youth, but it is important to include youth.
Oh, there's a question about multiple wards. There's actually two questions to that effect. Essentially, can an applicant focus on multiple wards, or are we requesting one single ward? Does anyone want to take that?
Yeah, I can take that one. We're asking, it would be, if you do have deep connections to multiple wards, that's very helpful. But by and large, we're really focused on the quality of connections to community. So if you're connected with community, deeply connected in wards 4, 5, 7, and 8, that's great. If you're only connected and deeply connected in ward 8, that's also great.
Yeah, I think then there is also a couple of questions that are similar. Is it possible to offer more details around what info data beyond demographics that org should be capturing and engagement so that we can get a good gauge if it's a good fit? And then similarly, can you explain information that will be solicited from participants? So yeah, I can take that. I think so. We want this engagement to be complementary to the engagement that we're organizing through the Office of Planning. So in phase 2, we will be talking a lot about approaches to growth and how the land use of the city might change as we move forward to DC 2050. So talking about what the impact of that might be for people in different communities, the priorities that residents in different communities would want to see for that growth, what matters most to them in their neighborhood, in their communities, and across the district as a whole, in gearing up for getting ready for the draft plan. So we will be, as I mentioned from the earlier slides, having a couple workshops in February and March. And then our draft plan will be coming out in September, which will be the full suite of policies, as well as what's called the future land use map, or the policy map that kind of determines the height, density, use of what can be built in different places. And so part of what we'll want to be doing is also educating around preparation for that drafting, for that draft plan, and being able to provide comments on that. So hopefully that's helpful. We will also be providing many more specifics as to the types of questions and engagement activities that OP is leading and organizing when we kick off and have an orientation with the selected grantees once the selections are announced. Let's see, going back up should we assume that to reach limited English proficient residents, we should budget for translation of OP materials as well as interpretation, or does OP already have specific materials in the official languages? So that is a good question. We do translate those necessary and required languages, documents into the required languages. But I think if you are planning for engaging in other types of materials that would be your own materials outside of what OP is creating, then you should budget the translation for that, I would say.
And I would say key materials are really just the most important documents. So things like presentations are not translated into those 6 languages, and it's very likely that you would need to do some translation within the grant.
Okay. Can you please explain the information? Okay, that one we covered. Can organizations submit an application jointly?
Do you have an opinion on
the
this one?
technical side, the question is yes, you would have to designate a lead. If there is an award, we can't award one grant to 2 organizations. It would be signed by one lead. A purchase order would go to one organization. So the answer is yes, but please be clear in your application, sort of who's doing what and who is taking the lead.
Katie has a question. Is reaching populations at or below 50% MFI an eligibility requirement or just a preferred audience?
So that's what we're looking for in your work plan, is how you're going to reach residents with lower incomes. So yes, it is the target audience we're reaching. It is not the only audience you have to reach, but we really want to know how are you going to reach residents with lower incomes. And so that's an important part to help us understand your ability to reach those communities.
Christy asked, approximately how long will each workshop engagement activity last to collect information? 1 hour, 2 hours? So if you're thinking about the OP workshops, our workshops are typically have been 2 hours, but as you are developing your work plan for this grant, the types of engagements, workshops, activities, education sessions, however you structure that, that is up to you. OP will work with the awardees again as we have that orientation to kind of refine that work plan to align it with what OP has planned at that phase. So,
and the reason we're taking this approach is we want to be able to build on your understanding of what works for the communities that you're connected with. And so that's why we're not bringing a one-size approach here.
Yeah. Regarding the activities on the timeline, namely DC Fall workshops and spring workshops, are those scheduled OP events that grantees should participate in? Or is that when grantees should hold their own events? No, those are the OP sponsored events that we will be organizing. That was just context for you to kind of get a very broad brush strokes knowing where we're headed and when OP will be doing major engagements as we get into the timeline of the grant. Is the 30,000 for all grantees or per grantee maximum? So that is per application, per grantee application is up to 30,000. The workshop should take place between February and March, not beyond. Again, those are our workshops. The grant runs through September. So we want to provide leeway and also kind of some thoughtfulness and strategy on your capacity as CBOs as you're developing these work plans. One thing that I will say is the bulk of our engagement is being done in February and the March timeframe so that there is sufficient time to get feedback so that we can begin drafting the policies that are that will make up the draft plan. And we will talk more about that kind of as we review and go over work plans in final, but the grant does run all the way through September. I think the focus of how maybe we would recommend the types of things you engage around might be slightly different if you're doing an engagement in, say, July than if you're doing it alongside the spring workshops in February, March. Are there any examples available online of the workshop so we can develop engagement activities that fit? Yes, you can go to dc2050.com. You can see some images, some information, some boards, and various questions from our previous workshops that we had in March. And also you can view the game that we played in May and June. You can see some of the conversation and the questions. You can also read our engagement summary report off of the website. That would be a really good thing to take a look at. That goes into how we have engaged through phase one, some of what we've heard to date. So those would be good background materials. Let's see. How many grants does OP anticipate awarding?
That's a really good question. I'll answer this one. We don't have a fixed number that we would award. It would likely be a maximum of 5, but we don't have a fixed number.
Is this grant for an outreach effort or a workshop specific initiative? So it's really for the outreach. I mean, it is really a whole work plan that could likely include something like a workshop, but there are other ways to engage with communities. So we're really relying on your local expertise as to how best to reach various communities to get feedback on the types of questions that we collectively kind of discussed we'll be getting at the time you're doing engagement, and to develop and to bring people into the process that haven't been involved yet. Would workshops from June through August make sense?
I think a short answer is they could, and this is something that we would talk about in more detail as we work out the grant agreements. By and large, what we want to do is make sure the communities you're working with, that their voices are included in this comprehensive plan. As part of that, we want to make sure we're building capacity, awareness, and understanding of what the comprehensive plan is, why it matters to communities across the city, and how to participate and provide input to the process. So there's a number of ways that those goals could align with workshops over the summer, and we're happy to talk more about that as we review, as we work with selected organizations.
Beth asked, can our engagement focus on one issue area, such as residents' views on what they think food access could look like? I would say I would try to be more comprehensive than just a one issue area. We're trying to get feedback on kind of the entirety of what this plan can mean to the lived experience of different communities. And so we'd like to engage them in the process and get feedback on all aspects of that. If surveys are a form of,
that's probably worth just saying a little bit more about, thinking about what a resident's experiences in the district, where they live, how they get to the places that they buy fresh food, and how they get to the places their kids go to school, how they get to work, those types of, what is a complete community? What do you need in your life to achieve, to meet your goals in life? Those are the types of questions we want to get at so that we can ladder that up to what are the city's goals as a whole and where are we going together?
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, food access is definitely critical to engage residents around. I would just say not solely that. Broaden the aperture a bit. If surveys are a form of outreach, would y'all help in this thought partnership? I think OP will be coordinating regularly with the awarded CBOs. So I think there'll be opportunity to ensure that ideas are aligned and kind of workshopped collectively. The newsletter has a link. Okay, that's Alina. Is the push for engagement to drive conversation? Yes, we want to encourage conversation. We want to pique community members' interests in the planning process and get them involved as we continue in phase 2 and move into phase 3 to make sure that their voice is at the table and that they're engaging as we actually put out a draft plan and start getting comments on that to move towards adoption and implementation. So yes, we want to start conversation and also get feedback from that conversation. I think that's all the questions we have on the chat. If anyone has any additional questions, and you could either put them in the chat still or raise your hand. I mean, we can call
Nick?
on folks if your hand's raised. Yes.
Nick and team, there was one earlier. Sorry if you answered it. I guess repeating isn't the worst thing. Christy at 2:37 p.m. Approximately how long will each workshop engagement activity last to collect information? 1 hour, 2 hours? Can you talk about, quote, collecting information and how that fits into our goals and anything else that might help, Christy?
Yeah, so I think that's really up to you, Christy, and in your work plan, how long and what types of engagement activities you think are going to be best to reach the community or communities that you are kind of targeting through your application. So we'll work with you, of course, on finalizing that work plan, but really, really up to you. And I see, go ahead.
I was just gonna say Inez Saki Te has her hand up,
Yes.
or his.
I'm gonna unmute Inez. Hold on 1 second, Inez. Okay, you should be able to unmute Inez and ask your question.
Okay. Yay. Okay. So I have a loaded question. The first thing is this a outreach effort where we want people to fill out surveys or I know you want to collect data, but how are you looking at collecting the data? Or how would you like us to collect the data? My next question is in terms of engagement and driving the conversation, are we looking at like sit down forums, meeting at libraries? Because I feel like that's what you guys are already doing. So I'm gathering that you want something that's a little bit out the box that targets the community more efficiently and effectively, right? So to that end, how are you looking for us to capture this data on iPads, QR codes? Like, I'm trying to get an idea of what this looks like in terms of engagement and outreach.
So I
Yeah,
think you're reading intentional ambiguity, Inez. And the reason why we're doing that is we want to be able to listen to what this community of, this group of community-based organizations, the community-based organizations across the city have learned that works with their communities. We do use workshop formats as the lead for our engagement model. And we do think those can be very effective. They may just be about the right locations and connecting with the right people to invite their neighbors to join these conversations. So, that's part of what we're trying to learn from you. And that's why we're not being very specific about the types of engagements we're looking at, because we want to get your experience.
Oh, okay. So but in terms of the data, so once we bring people in or we are able to engage said community in a certain kind of way, the data, what kind of data would you like us to bring back? And how would you like it presented? Like, I'm just trying to get an idea of like, okay, if we're doing outreach, we have a target audience, we get our target audience, but the thing is you still want the information.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for in terms of that information? Like, are you looking for like more of a a focus group situation, or are you looking for you know, like what aspect of data collection are you looking for?
That's a great question, because this is a big kind of amorphous idea to collect information around, right? So there's kind of two big pieces we're looking for. One, we want to know who you're connecting. We're looking for some pretty standard demographics, race, ethnicity, type of housing people live in, some things like that to help us. And then what we're doing, we're collecting that same information among every engagement across this planning process. And that helps us to understand where gaps might exist. The other thing we're looking for is a 10-page report on what you've learned. And the reason why we're looking for that format is we are looking for the qualitative, what people want, what they need, what their lived experience reflects. And that 10-page report might have statistics out of a survey. It might have summaries of a dot exercise on a board. Those are all things planners love. But it might be the summary of a focus group. And that's part of what we want to have your thought partnership on, is how do we get meaningful input from the communities you know really well on this important planning process that guides the district's future.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Does it have to be 10 pages? Can it be, and I mean, I might be giving out too much information, but can it be like in terms of like a short or documentary?
That's a really good question. By and large, I do think we're going to want something. Ed, do you have an opinion on this? Because we are specifically asking for a 10-page report in the RFA. Do you have an opinion here?
Yeah, I would go
Are
what
you-
is in the request for applications.
So
Okay.
we're not going to have a lot of leeway here. We're trying to provide an intentionally open-ended planning process, and that's why we're asking for the 10-page report. That's going to be some on the short list of things where we are going to be inflexible.
I do. Yeah. Thanks, Inez, for your questions. I think you can always go above and beyond what's in the RFA, but I think meet what's in the RFA to kind of close the loop on that. I want to bring in Lynette. She's had her hand up for a while. So Lynette, you should be able to ask your question if you unmute.
Thank you. I just want to be clear so that I'm not getting confused based off some of the questions. To be clear, you are looking for organizations that already engage the community in some way, that already has a relationship. I should not be trying to build a relationship in order to execute out the actions requested in this grant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And then
A couple other chat questions.
Yeah, there were
Nick.
some chat questions. Yeah.
Can you share more about reporting requirements? I don't know if that is grant administrative related or the demographic information and other report you were looking for.
Yeah, we shared a little bit about that. There's a 4-page interim report that is needed, and then a 10-page final report, as Ryan was just describing. So that is what we'll need to show from your engagement and reporting. Alina or Ryan, did you want to say anything else about that?
The
I just
reporting
dropped,
requirements.
sorry.
Go ahead, Elena.
I just wanted to say I dropped these specific requirements as we described them in the RFA in the chat, but we will provide a template as part of the grant agreement package because what's in the RFA is just a sentence or so. And so we'll provide more detail so folks have a really clear picture of what is expected as part of the grant agreement process.
And then, yeah, so we have Jackie. I know there's a couple questions in the chat as well. So I'll take one more from the chat and then go to Jackie. Are participant incentive stipends permissible?
I believe so. Ed, do you have an opinion on this?
I think in the RFA, as I scroll up, we list the eligible activities and what is not eligible. And just quickly through the not eligible: ticketed events, food, lobbying, to cover expenses you've already made, to finance your existing debt. So if that is something that you're interested in, you would need to sort of describe that in your application.
Yep. And Jackie, you should be able to ask your question. Or...
Hi, thank you so much. My question is this a project-based grant or is this a data collection grant?
I would say we don't quite fit narrowly into either one of those definitions. This is specifically about collecting information for a project, but we're not asking you to complete the project itself. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
So DC 2050 is this very large planning process. Comprehensive plans are very, they're 20-year long planning documents. They're, And so that's what the Office of Planning is producing. We're asking for your help collecting input to inform this document and to help communities who have been less engaged in the planning process, both in this process and historically, to build capacity to share their voice and make sure that the comprehensive plan reflects their lived experience.
So there is a document entitled 2050 plan or strategic plan or something like that.
Yep. So this will be called DC 2050, and it'll be the district's comprehensive plan. We'll be releasing the draft plan in the fall of 2026. And part of what's happening is you're going to be helping us collect input to create that plan and build capacity among communities who have been less involved in comprehensive planning, both currently and in the past, to provide input and help us align that plan with their lived experience.
Is there a way to sort of read what you already have? So it would I know it would help inform me if I could kind of just see what you already have. Is that possible or no?
We don't have any drafts available at the time, but we do have a lot of information about our goals, approach, timeline, and function of this document available on our website, dc2050.com.
I'll go
Yeah.
there. Go ahead.
And I just put the link in the chat for everybody on. Definitely a good resource to check out. And again, I know we only have a couple of minutes left, but just a reminder that if you have additional questions, you can email us your questions at dc2050@dc.gov. Helpful if you put like CBO grant in the project or in the title of the email. And submit your applications. Final applications need to go to Ed at his email up there by October 22nd at 4 p.m. Please note the 4 p.m. timeline as well on that date. And yeah, happy to. As Alina, I know you said we'll follow up with any additional questions. We'll be posting those for everybody to see the responses if we get any additional questions.
Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for all the questions and all of the thoughtfulness.
We look forward to working with you, and we look forward to seeing your applications. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for joining.